Welcome to Leyton's Expert Exchange podcast. We are here for another episode in our Women in Business mini-series, and today we're having a fascinating conversation about the future of the aluminium industry. I'm delighted to be joined by Nadine Bloxome, CEO of Aluminium Federation, ALFED. For the last decade, Nadine has been championing UK aluminium industry, driving innovation, advocating for policy change and leading efforts to make manufacturing more diverse and sustainable. She is also a founding association member of BAC British Metals and serves on the board of Women in Recycling, working to amplify women's voices in the industry. Nadine, thank you so much for joining me.
How are you? Thank you for inviting me. Yeah, brilliant. Good to be here.
Good, I'm so glad you're here. Nadine, I think the best place to start is for you to set the scene and tell us a bit more about ALFED and the work that you do to support the aluminium industry in the UK.
Yeah, certainly. Well, thank you. It's quite interesting hearing that kind of background. It reminds me what I've done for the past few years. But yeah, my role within ALFED, so I've been leading ALFED since June of last year, but I was involved in ALFED for a few years before that, and then previously I was in the aluminium industry in a completely different capacity because I was an editor of a B2B publication that focused on aluminium production and processing. So I've weirdly always been in this world, but I had always known of ALFED. I'd worked kind of alongside the teams in the past when sort of media partnerships and being involved in a lot of the networking and the industry events and everything that they were doing. So had a real interest in it as an association, and now I'm quite humbled and honoured to be actually running it and really being able to be embedded in the UK sector. So that's exactly what we are. ALFED is the UK's leading trade association for the entire aluminium supply chain. So we cover everything from key producers all the way down to kind of stockholders, distributors, finishers, the whole kind of chain. And in that vein, our goal is to really champion the aluminium industry and the whole sector to make sure that all the businesses, whether they are the producers, the recyclers, end users, anyone that's actually involved in even sort of the smallest of aluminium kind of applications, they get a strong voice within government and also kind of across the wider industry. So we work to provide advocacy, policy engagement, obviously industry intelligence as well. We make sure that our members are up to date with all the latest sort of trade data and anything that would be affecting their business. We also provide training, technical support and things like that, so they've got access to kind of quick and up-to-date sort of refresher courses, or if they've got any new starters or anyone coming in as well, or kind of apprentice levels. But more than that, we try to be a network that kind of brings these businesses together to share knowledge. So, and actually this morning we've been hosting an extrusion meeting for our extruders, and having those conversations across the table where they feel like they can do that. It's not like a competitive environment. It's somewhere where they can actually come together and share the challenges that they're all experiencing as businesses is really important and really kind of valuable. So making sure there's collaboration across the sector just to make sure that we can kind of push that industry forward. So yeah, we like to think that the work we do is quite critical to just ensuring that the aluminium industry remains a kind of key part of the UK's manufacturing sector and as part of the industrial strategy, and particularly in areas like sustainability and innovation as well.
Yeah, absolutely. As you've said, the aluminium sector is a foundation industry and it's critical to UK manufacturing and the wider economy. What are the biggest challenges and opportunities facing the industry right now that you're hearing from your members?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that the kind of foundation sector that we are, we're still not really being recognised. Even though we are a foundation sector, we're not being recognised as a kind of growth industry. So within the industrial strategy and within the kind of government's growth plans, metals and aluminium specifically isn't actually mentioned within that. So that's one big challenge. That's something we're working to try and highlight, where there are huge opportunities, and not just about the kind of growth of aluminium as a sector and as the products, but the growth of like communities that build up around certain facilities and certain manufacturing environments and things like that. So yeah, that's certainly a huge challenge for us. I think another key point that kind of leads in to that as well is this skills base, and I think this is the same for all manufacturing sectors at the moment, and again was a key point of our discussions this morning, where everyone was kind of sitting around the table just saying we don't know where to get kind of new starters, people that are happy to come in and learn a skill and develop a skill and kind of make that into a career. So yeah, that's another huge challenge for us. more kind of recently, and from a more trade impact perspective, obviously everything around the tariffs that have been announced from the US and President Trump is something that we're still trying to navigate through as a sector, because it's going to have so many implications that we can't really pinpoint at the moment, and it will have a lot of indirect as well as direct challenges for our sector. So that at the moment is us trying to ascertain where we sit within those that kind of market, what it's going to look like going forward, how it will affect again our whole supply chain. So I think that's probably one of the most pressing challenges for the sector, which unfortunately does lead into a bit of a perfect storm. So I don't want to make this too negative, but obviously there's energy prices, national insurance going up for a lot of our members, and it's this kind of, while we're looking at growth and while the government is so focused on growth, there's so much kind of pulling from the other side to prevent that growth. So it's how do we navigate that?
Yeah, it's the big vision picture that the government wants everyone to move towards, and then there's the real day-to-day challenges that is facing everyone. Like you said, national insurance rise, even that one small thing is going to have such an impact on every business. So you mentioned, of course, the challenges there in detail. What opportunities do you see as well coming from maybe some of the challenges that you're facing, or opportunities on the wider scale within the market?
Yeah, nice, positive. Yeah,
yes.
More positive opportunities. So definitely, so much, I think, again, pulls into that growth idea that we are an industry that we've got so much innovation, so much R&D still to kind of give and still to do. So I think that is something we should be really focusing on, like where does aluminium fit into our future? And this is kind of goes with changing this narrative of the foundational industries as well. Foundational seems a bit kind of old-fashioned in a sense. It's we're a pillar, which is great, but we need to be seen more as actually a future industry that will benefit a circular economy and a more sustainable UK for everything. So I think the opportunities within that are really about how we position aluminium as a kind of critical material and metal for future innovation, but also for just the kind of consumer, and to understand the actual benefits of aluminium and what that looks like. And I get quite then passionate about, I have aluminium cans constantly in the house, and I'm obviously a big advocate for aluminium, but it's a lot more than that. And I think it's the kind of day-to-day stuff that people don't really understand what a part it plays in our lives. And also anyone then coming into maybe engineering or kind of careers focused around sustainability, this is where you could be really involved in a job that you are making a difference as well. So hopefully those kind of opportunities, I think we need to sort of showcase a bit more, and just give people a bit of an idea as to what actually you can be doing to be involved in something like this.
Definitely. And you talk about that talent attraction piece, like you just say, that sustainability mission is a huge part in attracting that next wave of talent that will come through. Yeah,
and I think we should, although we seem to be moving, I'm not saying we're moving away from the sustainability side of things, but growth has taken over, and I think we can't forget that the two kind of still go hand in hand. But people coming into, or younger people and anyone coming into new career paths these days, they want to feel like there is a kind of a sustainability angle to it. Where can they maybe be involved in things that are leading a change or making a difference. So I think it's just trying to shift this narrative of there are industries out there that might have previously been kind of stereotyped as heavy industry and not so clean and lean and all these kind of things, but actually there's ways now with technologies and with innovation that you can really change that. And it's quite an exciting time, I think, and I'd love for that to start filtering down to that generation that are starting to think about what they want to do with roles and jobs and things, and actually just open it up a bit more.
Yeah, absolutely. How do you think that the UK is positioning itself against global competition?
Oh, that's a really hard question. Well, I think with everything going on at the moment, it's quite interesting to see where we fit on that kind of main stage, really. I think we need to be a lot more aware of how much we can rely on ourselves as a nation, really, and I don't think we can from a everything around the tariffs perspective has kind of opened us up to realising how much we export, how much also we import, and how reliant we are on our imports and exports. And that's not a bad thing. I think we're able to be quite competitive, and I think a competitive market and a competitive kind of environment is great for business, but I think it's when that does become uncompetitive and unsustainable that we do start to struggle. So I think we just need to appreciate and understand a bit more about where we can be making some of those changes or investments into our kind of domestic manufacturing and our domestic processes, whether that's recycling or kind of just making sure we're keeping more of our products for our usage and UK's usage. So I think that's maybe an area we need to kind of start being more aware of and understand then again how that plays into our sort of growth strategies and making sure that we're developing so that we become a bit more sustainable in our practices and what we're consuming as well as what we're kind of offering out as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mentioned in the introduction that you are also a founding association member of Back British Metals. So do you want to tell me a little bit more about how that initiative is supporting that?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, Back British Metals is a bit of a tongue twister anyway.
Sorry.
No. It's BBM. Everything's got an acronym now as well, so BBM. But we kind of fell into it really fantastically through it was Mike Smith from the International Raw Copper Council who set it up initially with another chap called Michael Blakeney from the cobalt. So it was kind of copper and cobalt that had come together, so not really a tie in there from aluminium, but there's now only a kind of core group of us that are the founding members within that. So we've also got the Aluminium Federation and Johnson Matthey, who are kind of precious materials and minerals. So it's nice in the sense that we can be quite nimble, and we're quite, not too many cooks or anything from that perspective, but it's definitely more about creating this sort of holistic view on where metals can come together and actually the importance of all metals, not just then keeping us kind of siloed in our pathways, because we're all ultimately working towards the same goals. We've all got the same kind of challenges when it comes to everything we've just said, like legislation, trade, and all these kind of the unfair competition. So we are a lot more focused on kind of policy output, what that means from an advocacy perspective, but also then just trying to deliver more kind of understanding around what it is metals can do, where we're a lot more able to contribute to the economy, what we're kind of offering in that sense. So it's a lot. The focus is more kind of from a financial perspective as well, and kind of looking at GVA and just saying, this is where we sit as an overall, but then we can kind of break off into our little segments as well, just to kind of really champion those voices too. But I'm excited to be involved because I think it's got a lot of potential to be able to kind of really underpin a lot of what we're focusing on as leading associations, but it just gives us the opportunity to be a lot more policy driven and a lot more kind of, we can actually just sit around the table, a few of us, and just hash things out, which seems to be getting us somewhere at the moment, which is good. Yeah.
In your own separate areas, you're quite aligned in what you're looking to achieve, so it makes sense to come together. And you've also got that, the weight of everyone's viewpoint. It's not you all acting as individuals when you're going to try and affect legislation. It's working together.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's helpful because there's also kind of tie-ins. People have got those contacts, and we've had the support already of the government. We've kind of got the year of government, which is great, and to have happened quite quickly is because actually kudos to a lot of the people already on the team, because they've got this kind of in with government. So we've been able to have conversations and roundtables and actually get an understanding of what it is that government need us to provide them with, rather than us just throwing everything at it and thinking, let's hope something sticks. So hopefully we've got a bit more of a strategy there as well.
Great. So Nadine, you've been a strong advocate for increasing female representation in manufacturing and heavy industry. What inspired you to focus on this, and what changes have you seen over your 10 years in the industry?
I think I really have to give credit straight away to a lot of the other amazing women that were already kind of driving these initiatives, and I think it's just come at a time where I've been able to be involved in a lot of them and kind of just seen a lot of them coming to fruition. So it's timing wise has been perfect. It kind of fitted exactly as I took over last year, and I was already very aware of some of the work that was going on. So for me, it's just been more about ensuring that there's kind of alignment between what's happening, because we've got some fantastic groups. We've got women in recycling, women with metal, women in aluminium. I think there's now a women in can making association. Which is just, I mean, 10 years ago I wouldn't have ever really thought that these kind of things would be coming together. And it's what I've seen when I was more involved beforehand in just sort of kind of conferences and running events and real B2B industry networking and things like that. I remember I would walk into a room and I would be one of the only women there, and at that time a younger woman as well. So it kind of struck me that I used to find it very hard just to go in. I knew I had to network. My role beforehand was more from a journalistic background, so I had to go in, I had to ask the questions, and it was very much trying to be a voice in those sort of discussions as well. I'm going to get my voice heard as well. So I never really thought about it as much during those sort of times. I just kind of accepted it as that's how it was, and I was just seen to just be happily asking questions here and there. But I think as I've grown into the industry, and obviously I've seen this now a fantastic shift in it's not so male dominated, but in the role I'm doing especially, I'm really just quite honoured to have some absolutely incredible women around me now who are helping to build up ALFED, and I'm not working with them primarily because they're women. It's just, it happens to be that now we've actually got some of these women in these leadership positions that are able to have more of a contribution into what's going on. So I just think it's really getting value in those different perspectives as well that people can bring, and these kind of groups can bring. So I've already really enjoyed just understanding how they're just providing a bit of a network almost. You can go to certain people and you know that actually I can have a conversation, and I don't mind asking someone if they've got a contact in this sector or that I can speak to about this. And it's very much more, it feels like an open dialogue, and it's making things feel a bit kind of easier to navigate in an industry that is still very male dominated, but I don't think it kind of now has that level of, well, for me, in my role, and this will probably be different for other people, but I don't feel like there's a level now where you're not sort of heard. You can be around a table and actually you can, there's a very fair kind of viewpoints coming from everybody. Yeah, and I think, well, we all know that the more diverse an organisation is, the better they work the forward for whatever it is that they're moving towards. So I can only imagine that the industry is being served by the fact that there are more women around the table, and more women-only spaces to also have to network, as you say, and to support each other and continuing that move forward. Yeah, definitely. And I think it's been amazing just to see some of these events and the networking kind of sessions and things that we've had haven't been just about the industry. It's been very much about how can you better yourself within your career, what skills can you learn, how can you build your own brand, and obviously there are a lot of topics and issues that are primarily for women, anything around maternity leave or anything around certain then financial implications of if you do need to take some time off, and what does that look like. And actually those conversations have been quite hard to have in the past, I think. So now if there is a community out there where you can just sort of say, oh God, what do I do about this, or what have you all done in the past, and you don't feel so alone, I think. So I felt like that's really helped me, especially coming into my kind of new role, just to feel like there's more out there, and these kind of conversations are easier to have, and you don't feel kind of like you're just trying to wade through it all on your own. Yeah, no, because you're not alone, are you? That's great. So you've mentioned Women in Recycling amongst some other organisations or networks. You're on the board for Women in Recycling, an initiative designed to give women a stronger voice in the industry. So can you tell me more about the work that's been done specifically in Women in Recycling and why it's so important? Yeah, definitely. I mean, the women behind it, Amy Bird and her whole team, are just fantastic. Amy can definitely champion Women in Recycling probably better than I can. But I think the idea behind it now is that the board especially are, again, so diverse and across, yes, it's the recycling industry, but across so many kind of elements within that industry. So obviously I represent members and companies that recycle solely aluminium and work with aluminium, where there's so many other different kind of organisations represented there as well. And I think for them as a group, it's been very much about developing that kind of safe networking space, which is brilliant because they are different in that respect. I think Women with Metal is more about the kind of skills angle and has brought the conference together, which has meant you've actually had more kind of access to information to build yourself up. And Women in Aluminium is very much mentorship led and looking at kind of even things like a conference register, so that if you're working on a conference in the industry, if you need or would like a woman to at least be on this panel, and you've got a list of people there that can speak about a subject, you don't necessarily have to just go directly and have a whole panel of men again. But Women in Recycling, I think it's just such a good environment. They've created such a great environment where you feel like you can be a bit free, and it kind of challenges you as well. So there'll be a lot more discussions that people are happy to kind of chip in. And I know we've got an event coming up on the 7th of March to celebrate International Women's Day, which I think kind of was planned around that, but we've actually managed to hit it on the day itself. And there'll be some great conversations, and Amy Bird, who's leading it, will actually be talking about kind of gaslighting, looking at imposter syndrome and all things like that you don't really see as playing a kind of part in your development, but actually it will really help to just understand if you could be experiencing those kind of issues, then how does that work? So I say they're really focused on your kind of career development, looking at how we can all build our networks and just be able to ask those questions a lot more easily, I think, because that's really needed.
Absolutely, and it sounds a lot like mentorship and even maybe sponsorship, within, if you have those relationships really strongly within that network. So how does mentorship and visibility play a role in women's career development?
Oh, I think hugely. I know what I was doing when I was sort of more involved in the editorial and the content side. I didn't have anyone that I felt like I could have just gone to and said, do you think this would be the right fit for the industry or anything? Whereas now it's already created this kind of pool of just women, but also people generally across the industry that are happy to share what they're doing. And I think it's really important when you're looking at kind of transitional skills as well. So if you're in a role that, especially for me, I'm more was in journalism, and that kind of then led me more into this industry, but how can I actually then develop a career in the industry, and how can I actually play a part in the industry? And it would have been amazing to have more access to that at the time, but I think this has now at least given me a base to know that it's out there, and I can now use that to my advantage as I kind of develop in my career as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And we did speak a little bit about the attracting new talent being a bit of a challenge that's going to face the industry, but what can organisations do to attract and retain more women in particular in the sector?
Yeah, I think it's a hard question as well, because obviously as an industry, it kind of depends which area you fall into, because obviously if it is more of a manufacturing element, if it's female engineers, then we do have to be more mindful that, if there is then a pregnancy or anything around that there has to be very different kind of health and safety aspects in place if you're on the shop floor. But I just think we can really make it more accessible for women to know, like I say, know that they could come into it as an engineer, but they can also transition across into different aspects of the business. And I think it's, as you mentioned, it's very much about using those kind of skills and seeing where they can then apply throughout their career. It doesn't mean they have to just kind of stick within one area for the whole time. So I think being able to present the industry as, not so dirty necessarily. There are elements of it that are always going to be a bit it's manufacturing, but just as an accessible career and a career that I think for women it's really interesting to know if you can actually then develop in a career and time out isn't going to affect anything. So I think building on that and making sure that people know that they can come in and actually if they're dedicating their time, there'll be the rewards with it. And it's a sector where there's so much kind of availability to be involved in different areas that hopefully that will allow them to kind of flourish within it as well.
Yeah, and I think that the work that you're doing women in recycling and the other women's networks where there are women being visible to, you know, the younger generation that are championing that as a career option. Like, I think that can only help with attracting talent into the sector too.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, representation even just really matters, I think. And actually that now makes a difference, because I think you're right. When I first started out, I'd go to a conference and it would be primarily men sitting on the conference panels because they were, you know, MDs or they were finance directors or they were CEOs or anything. And now to be able to go to an event or to be able to hear kind of viewpoints and just see that representation of women across the industry already makes it feel like a completely different world. And I think it doesn't make it feel like it's strange or anything like that. And it's quite interesting actually, because I was on a call the other day, and I've had this a few times where if there's been, interestingly, more women than on a call or in a meeting, a couple of times people have sort of piped up and, oh, you know, a man has sort of said, oh, I'm outnumbered. And I think quite interesting that's even I hadn't joined that, I hadn't really paid attention to who was on the call. I'd just sort of known. So I think it's good to see that there is more, there's more representation of women, but I think it's still quite interesting that you've got that little nuance of some people sort of think, oh, this is different. Mm-hmm. It's like, it doesn't need to be different. It just needs to be kind of how it is.
I mean, in all reality, it probably is still quite early days in that this being more of the norm, right?
Yeah.
And at least you talked about women being, you know, represented on panels, and that also, you know, I think it's a different world for young people entering the workforce now, going to events like that, and them probably not having that moment of second guess and going, oh, there is a woman on the panel, but for me and for you, that still is that moment where you recognise that is different. And then, you know, your example there of a man on a call saying, oh, I'm outnumbered here. It's still strange in that side too. So I think the more that this is a focus and the more good work that goes into just continuing to give women more opportunities, and, you know, I think that this will only become more normal and it becomes less of a thing that is noticeable. But I completely agree. We're still in the bit where it's noticeable.
Yes, exactly. And I think you're right. It's good that we're noticing that there's been that shift, I think.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, very good. So we did touch on this a little bit earlier, but we know that diverse teams drive innovation. In your experience, how does increasing diversity, particularly gender diversity, impact the aluminium industry's ability to innovate and remain sustainable?
Yeah, hugely, I think. I think diversity isn't just kind of a nice thing to have. I think it is definitely and should be positioned as a business advantage, really. Worryingly, there's obviously now a bit of a shift in the US, which is trying to move away from this kind of, the DEI stuff. And I think, I'm hoping that won't really filter down into a lot of what's happening from a UK perspective and what we're doing, especially in the manufacturing industry. But seeing quite big companies completely remove their DEI focus from websites and things is a worry. But I think we just need to, like I say, use it as a business advantage. And with all the evolution in the aluminium industry and everything kind of happening quite rapidly, it should help us to just stay a lot more competitive, I think. And I think having those fresh ideas, having, like we were saying, having kind of women around a table, or just having more input from different backgrounds and different ages and everything like that, I think is really what we need to be kind of making the most out of. So I'm hoping this weird shift that we're seeing won't kind of filter down into the manufacturing industry. And I'd love to see that we can kind of bring it from an earlier age now, and kind of those school children and ages that are coming up into their starting to think about what they might want to do when they grow up and everything. They see that they can do it, they can be involved, and there's no barriers, I think, to them. Would be amazing. Yeah,
definitely. I think we just need to keep moving forward, doing the good things that we can affect and impact. And it's a crazy world, and like we were talking about earlier, the only thing that seems to be constant is change, so we just have to roll with it. So what advice would you give to women looking to step into a leadership role in manufacturing, or those who feel, and especially for those, I guess, who feel that they don't maybe have a traditional background in the industry?
Yeah, I think it's it's an interesting one as well, because like I say, there's so many ways you can kind of transition into different roles nowadays. So, and leadership seems to be coming in some aspects quicker maybe than some people would think, because of like we said, the kind of lack of skills, and people then having to maybe make people into leadership roles quicker than they might have expected, or they might not have had such a kind of experience as they would think. But I think the main thing to take on is not feel like you've kind of got to tick every box before you step into that new role. Like if you're going into a leadership role, there's obviously a kind of warrant for that. You know, you've been championed as being able to do this role, and hopefully that means you're going to have the kind of support and a kind of team around you that will let you kind of grow and develop into that role. But I think the biggest piece of advice, and something that I still have to keep telling myself as well, is to believe in kind of what your skills can bring to the table. Try and use your voice, but also just don't ever stop asking questions either. I'm happy to always, in a meeting, even just say, you know, hang on, sorry, but I don't understand that, and actually can you just take a step back, and can we go to where we are? Because I just think it's always going to be easier to maybe show, you know, that you need a bit of help in that area, rather than trying to kind of fluff your way through stuff as well. So I think and now make use of the networks and things that are out there. Build a strong network, and kind of ask other women, or ask anyone else that's in a leadership position if there's anything else you could be doing, or any kind of training, and just try and keep learning with it as well. Because I think it's easy then to get very sort of overwhelmed by the role that you're in, and I've already done it myself. You know, I've sort of had to now think, right, I can't be doing everything within that. I need to relinquish some of it, but I need to kind of sit above it and be like, right, how does this all work together? So I think just having a network around you that you can do that with is very important.
Definitely. And you know, and seeing, I guess, especially in that leadership role, if you are having to, you know, delegate tasks to be able to build a bigger vision, that's all just creating opportunities for that next generation of talent to come through as well, isn't it? So it's a big circle.
Yes. Yeah.
So how do you think that transferable skills play a part, especially for women maybe looking to pivot into a different industry, maybe from outside of manufacturing or within manufacturing? How do transferable skills play a part?
I think hugely. I think it's something we're going to see a lot more of as well, like I said, because we are kind of struggling in some ways to bring people in that might have a specific set of skills that you're after. So I think we should just make a lot more use of people that have maybe had kind of practical skills, and how that can really be applied into other roles as well, because I think we've certainly started to lose this practical inquisitiveness that used to come with kind of childhood and kids playing and wanting to learn more and understand how the world works, because obviously that has shifted into kind of more digital world. So I think trying for companies then to also try and build and create environments where people feel like they can succeed as well, or feel like they can kind of explore different avenues too, I think will be really key, just to try and absorb the skills that people have got, but also then see actually you could really apply that to something else, and you could be brilliant at it, and they might not have even thought that as well. So if you can maybe see aspects of something in your team and present that to them as well, it might not be something they'd even considered or have thought about. So I think if you're aware of it and think, actually you could really move into that angle, it would be great just to suggest it to someone. They might not want to go down the route, but at least they've seen that someone thinks I could do that, and that's interesting as well. It's a nice feeling.
Definitely. So we have shouted out a few different women's networks in the space through the podcast, but let's just round them up here all at once for anyone listening. So what networks and resources would you recommend that women can tap into to grow in this space?
Brilliant. I'll do the shout outs, get the shout out out of the way, and hopefully I don't forget anybody. So for me personally, it's definitely been a case of the women in recycling, obviously relatively niche if you're kind of in the recycling space, but also kind of still more of a global organisation as well. Great for the networking aspect, great for kind of trying to understand more about how you can develop your skills, but also just having those real conversations with other women, and I think they're very much about, if you're in a room, feeling like you can walk into a room and have the support straight away, rather than thinking, oh God, who am I going to speak to, and that kind of thing. Women in aluminium are, again, slightly niche if we're just aluminium focused, but everything there is very much around, like I say, the mentorship angle and building a network of women that can then present at certain conferences or events. And if you want a specific help with kind of sustainability, for example, you've got a pool there of people that you can go to. And I think that's great then if you're trying to build up a team as well, and you can say, all these people are involved in these areas, so they're there. And the Women with Metal as well, again, it's at the moment it's sort of more focused around an annual conference, but I know Kirsty, who runs that, is really working hard to kind of build out maybe regional events and things. But that was kind of my first introduction into this world, really. And I remember coming away from that first conference just thinking, God, I've learned so much that I didn't think I was going to learn that day. It was so many. The first conference, there was so much in there. It was all, there was conversations around menopause, perimenopause, and how to kind of be financially stable when you're looking at, like I said, like when you're looking, if you've had children, or if you're looking at when you want your retirement age to be, in pensions and all these kind of things that you think, oh God, I know I've been putting that to one side. But those kind of things then really help you to kind of develop in your day-to-day as well as actually in your career. So I'd say they're my core, but I will have to, apologies if there's anyone else out there. I'm sure there's lots of other kind of initiatives going on that will be really helpful to people from a kind of more business perspective as well.
Yeah, I think that's a great place to start though, and as you say, once you get into these networks and you build up your own relationships and connections there, I'm sure everyone's got some suggestions all over the place for you. Yeah. So that's really, really great. Nadine, this has been a fantastic conversation. Thank you so much. Before we wrap up, is there anything else that you would like to share?
I think just along the same lines of where people can kind of build a community as well. So something we're trying to do within ALFED is not only focus on, again, women and bringing kind of more diversity into the industry, but where we can support anyone new, or whether they're young, whether you're, like I say, you're coming in from a transitional role. So we are looking at kind of developing a community that, again, offers you direct access to mentors, or to like a kind of new starter toolkit where you can find everything in there that you might need just to literally understand the industry. But I think these kind of ideas as well are what we're trying to really work on, to make sure that anyone has access to these kind of networks. So I think everything that's happening from a women in aluminium and metal and everything perspective is fantastic, but I think it's also then building out a slightly kind of wider opportunity for people to come in and see that it's an industry, and we are a sector where we want new people, we want kind of new skills, new ideas and new faces and things. So how can we work to support that, and how can we work to bring that in? So that's something that's on our agenda over the next year or so, to make sure that we've got this kind of, again, this pool of people coming in, and then we can definitely branch them off into certain groups and say, look, these are all the things at your disposal which we didn't have when we came into this industry, so hopefully it'll just be a lot more accessible for them to understand and to set them up a bit better as well.
Yes, accessible is the right word. Welcome in, and then they know exactly where they need to go for what support, and as you say, get a lay of the land very quickly. That's great. Nadine, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you to everyone for listening along at home. We're going to be back soon with the next episode in our Women in Business series, but until then, this has been the Expert Exchange podcast.